Good afternoon and welcome to Warren Evans' Teletown Hall event to discuss small business relief in the midst of COVID-19. My name is Khalil Rahal. I'm an assistant county executive, and we all know we've been dealing with COVID-19. We all know the strain that it has on small businesses. Look, small businesses have been closed for 3 months now. It's about a quarter of the year. And as they open, they're only able to open at 50% capacity. And they're facing a lot of new challenges, increased costs for sanitation, PPE, different social distancing, outdoor seating, plexiglass, and all the like. Some of them had to change the way that they've operated. Some of them have to change their business models. And so here today, we have some experts, a great panel of experts from different forms of government and the private sector to talk to people about what small business relief is out there. So I want to turn to my panel of experts for a moment. And we've got an excellent cast here. First up, we're going to have the county executive for the largest county in the state of Michigan, Mr. Warren Evans. We're also going to have the chairwoman of that same county, Chairwoman Alisha Bell. Two of the widely most known names in Congress and really in this country, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. And later in the show, we're going to have one of the largest regional CEOs from Southeast Michigan, Matt Cullen, who's the CEO of Bedrock, on the program to talk about all the things that we are facing with small businesses. Once again, my name is Khalil Rahal. I'm an assistant county executive here at Wayne County, and I oversee the economic development department. You are seeing this live on the Wayne County Facebook Live webpage and WhatsApp Media, and we are streaming all in Southeast Michigan, all around the country, and many other countries around the world. The format here is just like how we've had in the past. We're going to have each guest on to talk for roughly about 10 minutes at a time. At the end of that 10 minutes, we're going to go for about a 2-minute question and answers. And for anybody who's got access to their screens, you can ask any question you'd like. Now, we won't be able to get to all of your questions today, but just know this. Backstage, we have a talented set of business development managers. Wafad De Niro, Luz Meza, Kamal Asaflawi, Nasser Kayed, David Schreiber, and they are going to answer your questions if we can get the guests enough time to be able to answer your questions. If we don't have the answers for you today, I promise you we will follow up on all the web streams. So, with that being said, let's bring up our first guest, the Wayne County Executive, Mr. Warren Evans. Boss, how are you?
I'm fine. And thank you for having me. And, I want to thank everybody on the panel and all of the economic development people in the background. The indication of how serious you are about dealing with both this pandemic and its problems related to, related to small businesses and the impact on small businesses is the degree to which your staff try to get out there with webinars and other things to connect with small businesses. And it's just been going very, very well. This is kind of what we've announced today in terms of CARES dollars that's going to go to economic development for small businesses. Is our basically our third attempt to get into this space quickly. And our whole goal at Wayne County was, if you don't do it quickly, you may as well not do it at all. Because small businesses, when the door locks and no income comes in, their rent certainly doesn't go down, their utilities don't go down, and many are working on a small margin in the first place. So the ability to get money in the hands of people in small business is critical. And so we've had a partnership with Wayne County and TCF Bank, which is a large bank here in Michigan and a great partner to make loans available to small businesses in Wayne County. And I mean, we did that 2 months ago. I mean, the process started 2 months ago. And so we've had a number of people, probably 250, 260 businesses that have shared about $4.3 million in loan money to help keep them alive and keep them going. We've worked with MEDC on another grant program that has provided some money to small businesses. And today we announced a $50 million commitment through CARES dollars to small businesses in Wayne County, and we can go through the specifics. But when we talk about small businesses, we're not talking about um, the general federal code of what a small business is. We're talking about 50 employees or less,
Right.
yearly income no more than $1 million. If you're bigger than that, then you can deal with it yourselves far better than the small businesses. So we're really working at number one, putting the money out there, but number two, reaching out through mediums like this to get a hold of those small businesses and help to defray some of the anxiety they have about all of the red tape of trying to get loans, and how do we do this, and is it going to be more trouble than it's worth. And I mean, those are natural reactions for people, but what we're trying to do is break down those reactions. We really want people to come in or connect with us and make sure that they apply in this latest round in a grant. And most of us understand grants aren't just like loans. There's loans you got to pay back, grants you don't. And so small businesses that are on a small margin in the first place have a hard time with significant loans,
Right.
because they've got to find a way to pay them back. And so in on that end, I think we've been working really hard. This new program, we're going to try to give it about 10 days before we actually get started. And that's not because we want to slow down or delay, but it's because we need to get messages out like today so that people understand where to go, what's expected, and that sort of thing. And so I'm really happy to be able to announce the program along with Chairman Bell of the Wayne County Commission. And I just got to say that the relationship with Rashida Tlaib and Debbie Dingell in Congress has been great. I mean, they're always on the calls that we have about whatever, and they're always, that they're fighting. Sometimes it's an uphill battle. It's probably always an uphill battle, but they're fighters, and they're trying to look out for the best interest of their constituents, who are our constituents. And so, when you have a team, and I say that in a broader sense, not just my office's team or not just us, but the county commission, but all of us pulling together to try to do what we can in a terrible situation has been really important. And I think it's been really beneficial to the taxpayers. And hopefully at some point they'll understand that and appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, you mentioned just a few programs, your earlier Wayne County grant program of 1.6 million, your TCF loan program. Now you announce this really big $50 million program for small businesses. And you've also had other programs trickle out of all this, your open streets program. You've moved different things for regulation for business licenses.
All of that to try to help businesses have a chance to thrive. So yeah, we do those. And outside of small businesses, we've been involved in food distribution and other social. It's almost every weekend. We have another one tomorrow, and really internally in the county, I had a kind of a business decision to make when everybody went out. Because we had to close the workplace, it would have been very easy to lay off a bunch of people and save the money. But our thought was people have already been hit with a tragic setback, which is the fear of this virus and the toll it's taking on communities, and particularly communities of color. I wasn't going to add to that with the trauma of also saying, now you're laid off because we can't afford to have you. And so, whatever way we look at it, we think we're looking at it from a community perspective. And for the people in the business community, I can just say that we're also fiscally responsible. We're figuring out what to do with the rest of our CARES dollars we have over the last 5 years. If anybody's got long-term memory, they know what the county was like 6 years ago. And I can tell you this year, even with the big financial hit, we still have a rainy day fund of over $100 million. That doesn't come, just out of the clear blue. You have to work to do it. And so we try to balance the equities of providing whatever service we can to the community, but also making sure county government runs as lean and mean as it can.
Right. Well, let's talk about that for a second because, there's no doubt coronavirus has affected the United States more than other people. There's no doubt that Michigan took a really hard hit. And as Michigan's largest county, you run one of the largest health departments in the county. And talk to us a little bit about the numbers. How's it looking?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say that if you look at our numbers, and obviously you look at it in a national perspective, Michigan is probably the foremost state in the country for getting on top of the coronavirus and starting to chop it off and whittle back. I mean, there are a couple of other states about the size of my thumb that are also doing pretty well. But when you talk about big population states, Michigan is doing a tremendous job. So, I certainly give kudos to the governor who's led that initiative. And I know we all get sick and tired of quarantine and talking about social distancing and those things, but the worst thing that could ever happen to our businesses now would be to have to shut back down. Right. And particularly for small businesses, that would just probably be the end of the rainbow. Right. And so, we're trying to start up the right way. That's why our health department is spending a lot of time giving assistance to small businesses and others about ways that they can stay open, do more business, and still do it in a healthy and a safe perspective.
Sure. And you mentioned a little bit about the budget. Obviously, with executive orders and the safety concerns and the shutdowns, government revenues work on the economy moving. When the economy doesn't move, government revenues go down. So what do you, tell us a little bit about the budgetary concerns that you have and maybe some of the help we need.
Well, the revenues are really short, obviously. The property tax collection, which is what we live on, right, generally speaking, has dropped significantly. And by the way, with the number of people who have been laid off and not rehired, we're going to have the same problem next year. So this is not a one-shot deal. We're going to be paying for this sometime in the future. And I think it's important for people to know that earlier this year or last year, before any of this happened, Wayne County was still operating at $100 million a year less in revenue than we were in 2008.
Right. Good
point. And I mean, you think about the hit we've got now, but losing $100 million and operating effectively and being able to create a rainy day fund is no small matter. And so, that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, I think people sometimes forget, right? You went from a budget where you had an accumulative deficit of, $80 million and a structural deficit of $52 million. And here you are now with a $100 million rainy day fund. You've put the county in the right position to handle, these kinds of crises. So, I mean, I think
the team surely has. And I always acknowledge that because, I have a strong group of people who look out for each other and look out for the county. And that team chemistry is, I argue with some other people who run some other governments that will go unnamed. But I think I've built a team of people, and there's some other governments that run by free agency, they get the brightest and best, but they're not a team. They don't necessarily work closely together. And so I think the model we've created is certainly great for me.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned a little bit earlier about the pandemic and how it seems to have affected the African-American community worse than others. Clearly, there's a lot of social issues going on in our country. And I've got to ask you, as one of the leading African-American elected officials in this state and as a 50-year cop, I really think that you bring a unique perspective to the conversation that's going on there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thought is policing in this country does have to change significantly. I think Detroit has done better than many, many cities, and that framework was set when Coleman Young opened up the police department and started hiring minorities, not only as young officers, but throughout the command structure. And I think you find a different attitude in the city of Detroit, but that doesn't mean that policing in general doesn't need to change, because I think in many respects it does. There are just a number of, we spend a lot of time in police work doing things that we're not trained to do, because policemen have become teachers, they've become priests, they've become social workers, they've become everything in many respects. And so defraying some of that load of the things that police aren't particularly equipped and trained to do, it's not a bad idea.
Sure.
And to be able to spend more time, on the policing. And so, there are a number of things that just add to that problem. For example, and we may want to talk about it more lately, but we give lip service to reentry programs for returning offenders. And very few people would say that they're not interested in these returning offenders becoming viable members of the society. That's what we say. We even put money in the reentry programs, but we release the vast majority of people from prison with no identification and no ability to go anywhere, look for a job, or do anything else. That's hypocrisy. I mean, it may not have been intended to be hypocrisy, but the reality is that it is. I mean, nobody knows the identity of a person any better than the jail or prison. So to not provide identification that creates added tension for that released person, it's just not a good idea. And what's a cop going to do when he stops someone for whatever reason? I mean, routine investigation, whatever it is. Person doesn't have ID, they get handcuffed until the police can sort it out. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm recently released from prison and I'm trying my best to stay on the straight and narrow, having handcuffs put on me every time a policeman comes up and asks me for identification doesn't build bridges. And so there are a lot of issues like that that we need to deal with. And I think people are becoming more sensitive to the importance of it.
Got it. Interesting. It just seems like what you're preaching is to make sure that something comes out of all this, and I think that's very important. Low-hanging fruit, particularly from your law enforcement background. I'm getting some questions here that I got to ask you from the crowd because they're itching to get to you. One question is being asked is, how many businesses do you think you're going to be able to help with this $50 million loan program?
We really could probably help the loan program or the grant program.
I'm sorry, the grant program. I read that wrong.
About 5,000. I think, and there are probably 60,000 businesses in Wayne County, so it still could be very competitive. But if you look at it, 5,000 businesses to receive a maximum of $10,000, that is not something they're obligated to pay back, but something to help offset the expenses of getting them back on their feet. Is really significant.
Got it. Another question is, do you think that there'll be more money put towards programs like this?
I hope so. And I know both Debbie Dingell and Rashida Tlaib are fighting every day to try to make that happen. If any two people could be the spokespersons to keep moving that forward, it would be those two. But I mean, they certainly have an opposition in Congress that everybody's clear of. I don't need to talk about that. But I mean, there's no question that their desire at the federal level every day is to try to pump more money back in our economy. So we have that to be thankful for. At least that energy and drive is there.
Great. One other last question before I let you go. Some small businesses are wondering, do you expect to see a second wave in Wayne County, and do you think that their business will have to shut down again?
I expect to see a second wave, but I don't see. I'm not an epidemiologist, so don't anybody take me to the bank on this. But my sense is we have been through the phase, and we don't have to go through a second phase related to poor social distancing or poor behavior with this one, but we're going to go into another flu season.
Yeah.
And we're going to have other things coming. So we are trying at the county level to make sure that we up the testing long term, both, so our employees are safe, but also so citizens can come in and be tested and know. Because I mean, I think we will have the issue again in the fall or the winter. And shame on us if we don't prepare. This should not be a one-trick pony that we're dealing with now. This should be preparation for some change.
Right. Well, Mr. County Executive, thank you for your time. I know you've been able to answer some of these tough questions, and congratulations again on everything that you're doing. TCF loan program, grant program, now $50 million. Your staff is, moving all kinds of things around. So I say you're one of the busiest men during this pandemic that we have seen. So I can't thank you enough for your time.
I'm glad to be here.
Great. Next up, we're going to have the chairwoman from the Wayne County Board of Commissioners who actually approved the program earlier today, along with many other programs. And I know I've got a couple of questions here about health choice and others. And I want to say that to the chairwoman because, she happens to be the chair of the Health Choice Board. Madam Chairwoman, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
Good, good. Well, look, I do want to get this out of the way. And the boss kind of left off with talking about the grant program could help 5,000 businesses. Tell us your perspective.
This is a very exciting day for Wayne County and our small businesses. We've been able to help small businesses in different ways over the last few months during the pandemic. But this $50 million allocated to our small businesses is a huge deal because, sometimes a small business only needs $5,000 to $10,000 to really keep them going and keep them afloat. So this is going to help our daycare centers, our bakeries,
Yep.
our convenience stores, all of the small businesses here in Wayne County that just needs that extra jolt of financial support to get them over the hump. They've been hit terribly hard over the last 3 months and, between the loan program, but as the executive said, sometimes the loan program could sometimes put you in further debt because you have to pay that back. But with this grant program, this is really going to be the necessary funds and the necessity to help those small businesses get on their feet, continue to serve us. Because listen, our small businesses, they employ people in our neighborhoods.
That's right.
They employ our friends, our families, our neighbors. So this is going to be so important to those small businesses and our communities that need those small businesses to survive.
Yeah, I think that's all wonderful points. We're getting a lot of questions. Can you run through just very, very quickly? And now we're going to put it up on the website a little later, but can you run through a little quickly some of the requirements that it would take for a business to apply for this?
Sure. Again, it's $50 million in total. A business would have to have been in business for at least a year, have less than 50 employees, and have had sales, which is different from profitability, but have sales no more than $1 million. So if you've had sales of 20,000, 10,000, 5,000, 2,000, whatever your sales have been over the year, and you would have had to pay your taxes, that's important as well too. So I think those are easy benchmarks that most businesses can go ahead and apply for this. But it's very important that we cast a broad net out to as many businesses out in Wayne County as possible, because this is going to be that shot in the arm that's going to keep them going, that's going to keep our communities whole, and just to make sure that we're doing our part as government, because it's very important that governments provide the atmosphere and provide services and resources to our small businesses is very important. And we've done that. And I'm so proud that we've done that over the 3 months during this pandemic, especially.
Yeah, and I want to just say, you have been a staunch advocate to make sure that this money goes to where it's needed most, right? Through different versions of this program being presented to you, you've actually put pressure on the staff to tighten it up to make sure it goes to the most needy of places, right? And so you've molded it, and our team has sort of tried to meet the needs of your demands. And I think under 50 employees, under $1 million in sales is great, because what you're seeing is these resources that are out there, they're going to the larger folks, right? They're going to the bigger companies, people that have the resources. So I really want to commend for all your efforts on that. But I also want to ask you, you are the chair of the Health Choice Board. And Health Choice, in my mind, one of the best kept secrets in Wayne County. Tell us a little bit about it and tell us what you've done recently.
Absolutely. Health Choice is our insurance program for our small businesses. Sometimes our smaller businesses can't afford some of the larger companies that are out there to have health insurance for their employees. So this is a plan where the county pays half, the employer pays half. I'm sorry, let me go back. The employee pays half and the employer pays half. And as a historical review, at the beginning of the Health Choice program, it was a three-prong program where the county paid a third, the employee paid a third, and the employer paid a third. But then as we went into the Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act and some other changes in the law, it was changed to an employee-employer situation. But it's still so affordable for small businesses who really desperately want to provide health care to their employees, and they can't, spend $500, $700, $800 a month for their premium. So this really makes it affordable at as low as $230 a month for a premium. Then it goes up depending on the size of your family. No deductibles. We have DMC and Beaumont agreements. So if you're sick or need to be hospitalized, you can go to some of the best hospitals in our area. So Health Choice is a fantastic program. And even among the pandemic, what we've done is gone a couple of steps further, given a 20% discount to businesses so that they can even afford it even more so than they normally would. So that's been of great help. And then we were partnered up with SRGRX to provide prescription coverage for those families who may have lost their prescription coverage due to layoffs or furloughs. So Health Choice is really helping those small businesses in the realm of healthcare, which obviously is what we need right now to help those citizens who are desperate need of health insurance and to be able to take care of themselves in a health perspective while we're going through this pandemic.
Wow. Okay, that's wonderful news. So if you're a business right now and your expenses are high and you're paying for insurance, Health Choice is already probably a cheaper option for you. But what the chairwoman has done is help advocate to lower the premiums 20% and then get 50% of the cost of the prescription drugs during these times. That's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit. You're also on the Wayne Metro Board, which is a wonderful community action agency that provides all kinds of resources. Recently, your board had approved an agreement to send almost $5 million to Wayne Metro to administer a tenant-based rental assistance program. Tell us a little bit about it.
Wayne Metro is an awesome agency right here servicing all of Wayne County, the city of Detroit, everyone who's in need of help. The programs are so vast, but right now they're so very important, even more important than they would normally be. I'm so blessed that we were able to now provide funds to Wayne Metro so that they can provide rental assistance because, there's just so many layers of how this pandemic is affecting people, from job lost to your health itself. And this is just another avenue and a resource to help people who may be in trouble and they can't pay their rent because they're not working. So there is rental assistance that we have now at Wayne Metro for people who are in need of that. There's also the food assistance. There's water assistance if you can't pay your water bill. So many resources. I'm so proud of the work that Wayne Metro has done. And I'm so proud that Wayne County partners with Wayne Metro on a regular just to make sure that we are getting those services to the people here in our county that are in need. And this rental assistance program is just something that, unfortunately is happening because of the pandemic, but I'm happy that we can provide a source for people if they do need that among all the other resources that Wayne Metro has. So thank your team for all the work that you've done to just kind of gather up and get these partnerships together to really service the people in Wayne County.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I let you go, I do want to ask one last question. The county commission passed a resolution this morning, actually, celebrating tomorrow, June 19th, as a holiday. Tell us a little bit about why you did that.
Absolutely. So, as many of you know, Commissioner Martha G. Scott was formerly Senator Martha G. Scott. And in 2005, she put forth a national holiday, a state holiday that the third Saturday in June would recognize Juneteenth. Well, Juneteenth is actually tomorrow. June 19th is tomorrow, and we are so proud to celebrate. And what that means to those viewers who don't know, that's when the enslaved people in Texas found out that the emancipation had occurred and that they were now free. It took 2 years, but they found out June 19th, and that is something that we celebrate all across the country. Unfortunately, in school, when I was in school, that wasn't taught. I didn't find out about the importance of that until about 25 years ago when I was on the West Coast for a bit, because it's a big deal, obviously, in Texas, Oklahoma, Nevada, the Western states. But here in the Midwest, it wasn't that broadly known. So I'm so happy that myself and Commissioner Scott co-sponsor with me today a resolution acknowledging Juneteenth, and all that it represents, which is the freedom of African Americans from slavery. So it's very important, and there are going to be so many activities. There have been some this week. There'll be even more tomorrow and over the weekend. So I would ask everyone to please find a Juneteenth celebration in your neighborhood and participate, because in the midst of all that's going on, it's so important that we celebrate these things as we're looking for transformational change in our law enforcement and in our society as a whole, making sure that all people are treated just, all people are treated equal. And this is just another one of those things to move toward that. And I will also say, as a prelude, more things to come. We have a human rights ordinance that we'll be addressing in the next couple of weeks, as well as really looking at racism in this country. We're going to have a resolution that really looks at racism as a public health crisis. Because if you look at all the things that affects African Americans particularly, unfortunately, the core of it is racism. So looking at that for our health, and we saw how that played out with the pandemic, with so many African Americans succumbing to that. So just looking at racism as a whole, as a public health crisis, and then what we can do to take steps to address it.
What a phenomenal message. Really, thank you for your leadership on it. It's so needed. A couple of questions from our audience. There's some questions about the grant program specifically. Want to know if it's available for startups. Want to know, is it only available for brick and mortar businesses? Can you talk a little bit about those requirements?
Absolutely. I wish we had, $100 million that we could distribute for our small businesses. But even 50 million is a great start, and that is a lot of money. But in order to narrow it, we were looking at brick and mortar businesses and businesses that were in business for at least a year, to really help those businesses not go out of business. So those are the parameters for this particular round of funding. We're hopeful that after we expend this, or if we don't expend all of it, that maybe we can open it up. But for now, it is brick and mortar businesses, and you would have to have been in business for at least a year. There are other programs, the loan program through TCF that's still open until the end of the month. And I believe is it going longer, Khalil?
No, that's right.
But to the end of the month, the TCF loan program, and even still some of the federal programs are available. But for this particular 50 million grant program, it is for brick and mortar stores or businesses that have been open for at least a year.
Yeah. Well, Madam Chairwoman, thank you. And thank you for your time today. I got to say, you lead one of the most experienced bodies there is in any legislator. Most of your colleagues are either former representatives, senators, mayors, council people. And so you've got, a pretty veteran bunch, and they're really led by you in many, many different ways. I know you're passionate about transparency. I know you're passionate about process. And so I can't thank you enough for your time.
Thank you so much. Other people, and we are all a great, diverse group of folks. And I want to thank you for your leadership, Khalil, and helping us partner and move the county forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, next up, we've got no strangers to this audience or any audience. If you're looking, really anywhere around the country, we've got Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, both with us, coming up on the screen together. Madam Congresswoman, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Well, let me ask you, you all are the ones responsible for the CARES Act dollars being secured in the first place. Is this, how you see the money being spent? Do you think it's being spent the right way? What do you think of the $50 million announcement today?
Rashida.
Thanks, Congresswoman Dingell. I'm so blessed to have such an amazing partner in Congress with her. She's tenacious, which is super important among 434 other colleagues.
Yeah.
But we fought really hard. But one of the things that we are still hearing from our small businesses, and that's why the Wayne County Executive Warren Evans is leadership here in trying to tailor it around the, experiences of our businesses within the county, is it's still very cumbersome for our small businesses, as you know. Even applying is not as, it's too complex, and it doesn't allow more of a simple process to actually get access to these loans. I know what I hear from my small businesses in the 13th congressional district is, you know, it's too risky to apply for a loan, especially when we're not sure about what the process and guidelines are for forgiveness. So it's not very clear from the treasurer's office how those funds can be forgived. I know in the HEROES Act, we were very clear and put it in law. It's sitting in the Senate. We passed it, but making sure that if it's nonprofit organizations, which we know did apply for some of these PPP loans, that it would be forgiven for those that help low-income families during this pandemic. But it's not been very clear for a lot of our small businesses, small restaurants, home-based businesses, that the loans that they applied for will be forgiven based on the guidelines. So it's extremely still, for a lot of my small business, they want a lot more clarity. I know Congresswoman Dingell and I have been really focused on the worker rights part of it, making sure that OSHA has guidelines so it's clear for our small businesses as they bring their employees back, that there are some set guidelines they can follow. Again, so it's that lack of clarity that I continue to hear from our small businesses, and that's unfortunate. And we continue through the next COVID relief package to, require more clarity, but more of a sense of urgency to get that information out. But that's why it's so important to have the Wayne County take this leadership role and counseling people through the process. It's very cumbersome. And also to be just, for people to get advice, because not all the people that are probably listening right now have CPAs, right? They don't have certified public accountants. They don't have lawyers on hand. They are truly what I would refer to as our mom and pop shops. These are the ones that I feel like very much continue to be left out in some of the relief packages. But I'm really happy with at least some of the changes we were able to pass, which is extending the timeline, being a lot more clearer, and then really offering a lot more flexibility, which wasn't very clear at the beginning of the pandemic and what they offered to small businesses. But I know Congresswoman Dingell even has similar experiences.
Well, I have to admit that I was texting Rashida. I couldn't hear the county executive, so I didn't hear the details of the program.
Oh.
So that was why but I try to get, Rashida and I are known as double trouble. Let's just be honest, but we're your double trouble, and we will fight for the small businesses in our district every single day because you really matter to us. And we've been through sort of 3 phases. Some have not been good phases, and we need to go into the 4th phase. We envisioned a program because we knew that our small businesses were in trouble and that they needed help. So we've created all these letters. 3 months ago, no one knew what PPE was, PPP was, and other letters I can't even keep track of. But we knew that we needed to get support out there to our small businesses so that when they did need to close, they wouldn't fail, they wouldn't shut down. And look, and there were 3 programs within that. The emergency disaster loans, which would be converted to grants, the PPP, and the Main Street program, which most of the dollars have yet to even still get out there. But PPP was a disaster at the beginning, and many of the people that Rashida and I are trying to help, the 2 small businesses, were able to access it. The application process was cumbersome, burdensome. Many small businesses didn't have relationships with vendors, with the banks that they needed to. So we fixed it in the next bill, and we made sure that certain set amount of that money actually got to smaller community banks, took care of different minority groups. And, it was like a huge, I don't think that first round I talked to anybody who got the money, and you began to get word that people were getting the money, but there still needed to be far more flexibility. We needed to allow people to use some of those dollars for rent and mortgage and other business expenses, as well as protecting the workers in the period of time that the 8 weeks was there originally. But when we were in that Congress the last time, about 2 weeks ago, Dean Phillips had a bill, which was the Ppp Flexibility Bill, which is what Rashida was talking about a little, which gave more flexibility into the program. But we also passed the HEROES Bill, which puts more money into the program, gives people more, And look, yesterday or this morning, it seems like it was like yesterday, but it was only this morning, when we heard the new unemployment numbers, which are very depressing and very alarming. This isn't going away. I mean,
Right.
there's studies saying that our state is doing better than almost any state in the country, and yet we've got the highest unemployment numbers. 1 in 7 small businesses is likely to have to close. So we're not giving up. We're going to have to keep working. We're going to have to make sure there are programs out there that work for you, and we only know how to improve them when you tell us what's not working.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important point. We're about 40 minutes into the program. Just another round of announcements. Wayne County today announces a $50 million grant program for small businesses that are under 50 employees, and businesses making less than are accumulating less than $1 million in sales for brick and mortar businesses that have been operating for a year. And I think what we're hearing is, the PPP program, and this is at least what I've been hearing, is incredibly well intended, right? You have a loan program that can turn into a grant that, the two of you fought really hard for to make sure it wasn't taxable, right? Because most people don't know grant programs are oftentimes taxable. But I think the women here in Congress fought really hard to make sure that businesses did not have that extra burden. But what happened is, through the administration of the program, it's become very, very difficult for small business to get access to it. So today we announced a program with CARES Act dollars that the county received, thanks to the women that are on this program, to use it for that true small business in the way that it was intended. Now, you all have both mentioned the HEROES bill, such an important piece to it. Now, and I work for a government, local municipalities have taken a huge hit in revenues. Tell us a little bit about the HEROES bill, what it can do for local municipalities. Tell us where you think the conversation is. We're all very interested.
Yeah, I know. So for just small businesses, really quick, in the HEROES Act, there's an additional $10 billion in small business grants, which could expand in the $50 million that program that the Wayne County is doing. But yeah, it's $2 trillion, and it's significantly really laser focused on our local governments. You hear so much the Federal Reserve Bank and some of the treasurer always talking about, banks are too big to fail, too important to fail. Our local governments are really too extremely critical and probably really our front line to ensuring our small businesses have the services they need, making sure our residents, they're really the key people that respond to this kind of public health outbreak. So many of them had to go to working virtually. Some of them didn't have the technology in place. There was a lot of moving around resources, especially because a lot of our firefighters and police officers were, overwhelmingly getting COVID. I had one fire department, 60% of their firefighters had COVID. And so many of them really are in survivor mode right now. They were before, but now it's even more because of the pandemic. And every time they went and got PPE, that was a chunk of money within their reserves. Every time they had to switch things up, it cost money to a lot of these local municipalities. And so this bill is much more aggressive in offering direct aid and grants to our local governments, and even lowers the threshold so that it's much more comprehensive and includes everyone. Because in the previous relief packages were great, but like out of the 12 communities in my district, only 2 really got direct grant. So 10 of my communities, very small communities that have suffered through this pandemic, did not access those funds. And so HEROES really pays attention to that. We love that the fact that we have bipartisan governors across the country, mayors with different political backgrounds coming and saying, yes, this is how you can make sure to save people's lives and make sure that we can able to combat the pandemic, is making sure that these local communities that really touch the lives of our residents more than Congress does, right? They're the ones on the front lines doing this. So I'm really thrilled about it. And I know Congresswoman Dingell and I have been passionate about Water as a Human Right Fund is in there. So many of the local municipalities that have had to follow through on a moratorium, they have to eat up that cost when they do the moratorium, right? And so we have this fund coming in that will help with reconnection, but also help the family be able to pay their bills so they're not facing, a lack of access to water, which is so critical during this pandemic.
Wow.
And it also takes care of other utility bills and has a relief fund for mortgages and rent. But I
Right.
think the biggest thing is that people don't understand how heavily hit local governments have become. And we're all beginning to hear the budget discussions because there are such significant budget deficits. This money in the House passed bill from Heroes would give direct financial assistance to every city, every town, directly if it were to pass. And people need to think about that. The people we're trying to help are the first responders, the fire, the police,
Yeah.
our children. You know, another problem for many of these small businesses that they've got single mothers with children
Right.
that aren't in school and they don't have childcare, or they're people that have seniors that they have elder care as well. So the Heroes Bill tries to deal with many of those, and those are very real issues that as people are staffing back up, I did a town hall yesterday with small businesses similar to this, and these are real issues as they're trying to get their employees to come back. Everyday life is still a real challenge for a lot of people.
A couple of questions that I've got coming in here. In the Heroes Bill, tell us a little bit. Is there a second stimulus check? Is there more relief for student loan? Can you tell us a little bit about hazard pay? There's a couple of those questions that are sort of hanging out there that I think maybe don't often get enough attention in the larger conversation. It's a $2.2 trillion bill. So
I'm going to let Rashida take that. We would have done it a different way.
You
but
should
we
know,
put it in there.
you should know, I introduced the Automatic to Boost to Communities Act, which would have been reoccurring payments. But yes, in the Heroes Act is another $1,200 payment. The good news about it, though, is if you do have children, you get a larger amount. They expanded it to be able to help more there. I think it's very, very much $1,200. But the way they did it is again expanding the child credit, which allows it up to maximum $6,000, I believe, which would be huge. But in there too is a hazard pay, which I think is really, really important. It actually complements a lot of our small businesses.
Right.
And in there, it creates a federal grant to provide all essential workers $13 hour pay premium for each hour performed. This would be not to exceed $10,000 for not highly confiscated workers or so forth, but $5,000 for highly high paid workers. But it's retroactive payments, which I love. So it goes back. It's not. Yep. As soon as, so even if President Trump signs it tomorrow, it's still be retroactive. But these are our grocery workers, y'all, nurses, a lot of, again, folks bus drivers. When I meant nurses, but these are the folks that are cleaning our facilities. These are the folks that are security folks that have to protect some of the property, whatever it is. But these are folks that, really deserve, because their work life and what they're doing is so much different now during the pandemic. And it's scary for them. And some of them don't even still have adequate PPE, and we continue, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and I continue to, advocate and fight for access for those. But definitely, it's in there. Hazard pay, it's huge. I've gotten calls from residents like, we need to get this passed, and I said, yeah. But that's why it's called the Heroes, because we feel local governments and our, essential workers and folks like that are our heroes right now. And we want to be able to support them during this pandemic, because I truly believe they were the success in making sure that we saved lives.
Right. Unemployment, is that a part of the bill as well? Is it going to get extended?
Yes, the extension is in there.
Oh, excellent. That's going to be a big deal for some of our small businesses. Well, tell us what the atmosphere is like. Do you think it's going to pass? I know there's been conversations every day, and I think a lot of folks are asking us is, when are some of these things going to start happening? So if you have any message.
Congresswoman Dingell has been there longer. She can sense
Mrs.
it more.
I'm
thinking it's a great bill. Why not? But there's all these dynamics that she's more familiar with.
I would tell everybody to talk to your Republican members of Congress, talk to your friends that have Republican members, and to people in other states that, to urge their senators to act. I think I just don't think that as people are starting to go back out, which some are slowly beginning to do, I may be doing faster than I thought that I would do, but we need for people to understand that there's a critical need for the Senate to take this bill up and act. I had been optimistic we would do it before the 4th of July, and I clearly was seeing the glass half full, not the reality of half empty. But there is no way that we can leave for the August recess without this bill being done. We won't leave. We just categorically will not leave until this gets done.
Here, here. Can't thank you both enough for this kind of work. Very, very briefly before you go, because people are looking at your perspective on this. I've seen you both out in the streets, marching, speaking, advocating, fighting for social justice issues every day on your social media pages, on the news. Give us some perspective. Give us a little message of what you think some of the things that are happening in our country right now. What's the conversation like?
Well, I know, I grew up in this incredible city, growing up in Detroit, in Southwest Detroit. I kind of grew up with all these incredible mothers that have taught me always to speak truth and always not to stay silent. And, I remember marching even in high school on a number of fronts around issues that were happening around environmental justice issues. What I just want people to know, transformative change doesn't happen in the halls of Congress or who's in the White House. I promise you that, from the civil rights movement to the women's right to vote, to the labor rights movement, organizing unions, all of that happened in the streets when we demanded it. And then it got into the halls of Congress when we really raised our voices. And every time we marched, things happen. Like right now, people don't realize every time we march, all of a sudden now they're talking about getting rid of qualified immunity for police officers, right? Real thoughtful conversation around that. Now that we've marched, police officer that was involved in killing, the officers who were involved in killing George Floyd are now being prosecuted and charged. You see a shift of folks that I've never seen, and I want Debbie to talk about it. We both talk about some of our parts of our communities and cities that I would have never imagined will be holding signs that say Black Lives Matter. It's empowering, it's inspiring, but and Debbie knows, she's cried a number of times. They are young people that they take your breath away when they speak about wanting to be seen and wanting to be heard and how they want a real just society. It's incredible to witness and to be part of it.
But Rashida and I talk every day, and what's great is that we have different styles, although nobody ever wants us both intense and passionate at the same time.
Except me, apparently.
Oh, Khalil, we could tell them stories. No, but seriously, there are places that are used to people speaking up and speaking out, and there are places that don't normally. I've been to incredible walks in Lincoln Park and Allen Park and Riverview, Wyandotte, Roselle, and the police chiefs and the mayors have walked right along with me. I think we've got to be very careful, because I've had the last few days, I've also had some disturbing moments, which is what I talked to Rashida about at 10 o'clock at night. We are defunding the police means different things to different people. We are not going to do away with law enforcement. Jim Clyburn, who's the highest ranking African-American, has been very clear about that in the Democratic caucus. And the chair of the CBC, Karen Bass, has been very clear. And some of the men and women in our law enforcement have been the very people that I've called to do wellness checks, have helped me with domestic violence cases, and have been incredible people. But there are incidences that cannot be ignored. And we saw George Floyd murdered across the country. We all saw that. But the moments that, we need to create safe space that people can have conversations. The incident in Taylor the other day was obviously upsetting, and I've spent a great deal of time on the phone with everybody on this. I think the announcement this week by the Western Conference of Mayors and the police chiefs and the Western NAACP was a very significant effort to allow listening, people to talk. And I've been on the phone with several of the mayors downriver, and was Jim Perry at the DCC, and we're going to take that and extend it into the downrivers. And all of us, I've talked to Rashida and to Haley, we all want to be part of that. So people are feeling uncomfortable, but I do think that people really want to live up to what that flag represents. and they want liberty and justice for all. And we're at a crossroads in this country, and we're going to all work together to have stand for what that flag stands for.
Definitely interesting times, definitely interesting people. You all definitely have a very interesting job, a very challenging job. But I think the things that we are doing today, are a remarkable step forward in helping out. I just want people to know we at Wayne County would not be able to do programs like we are doing today for your true small businesses without the help of people in Congress like yourself. So I can't thank you both enough.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, we have one of the regional CEO leaders of our area, Mr. Matthew Cullen, who is the CEO of Bedrock and the family, right-hand man of Mr. Dingell and the family of companies. Hey, Matt, how are you?
Hey, good, Khalil. Good to see you.
Good. Thanks for joining us. I kind of just really quick want to pick off where the women from Congress kind of left off. Bedrock, Quicken Loans, the family of companies made an announcement just a few days ago, I believe, that they're going to celebrate, Juneteenth as a paid holiday. Tell us a little bit about why, your company decided to do that.
Well, I mean, I actually, the Congresswoman put it, very articulately. I mean, it's just something that we need to respond to what's going on in our country and our community. It's built over generations, and yet I think people have reached a point that it has to change, and we have to make visible the fact that the change needs to take place, and we need to be much more intentional. I mean, it's as Congresswoman Dingell described. I mean, it's not the first time. Certainly, it happened a lot of times. But watching Mr. Floyd murdered on TV, I mean, it just says. I think it just causes everyone to reach a point that they're like, enough. I mean, this can't go on anymore. And I'm as encouraged as they are to see the diversity of people that are taking that position, and diversity of race, creed, color, and age. I mean, and it's just it's very healthy. And I have to say that born and bred in Detroit, I mean, seeing the way that Detroit is dealing with it, with the leadership of the county executive and the mayor and the police chief, and that also feels good too. I mean, it feels like we're focused on the right issues, and I'm proud of Detroiters, if you will, and the attention that we're kind of laser focused on the issue, and not allowing others to co-opt what's going on, and to stay focused. So certainly from Juneteenth, I mean, it's a way to demonstrate our support of that. But as Jay Farner rolled out, I mean, we're doing it within Bedrock and other aspects of the company as well. That's a start, obviously. I mean, it's a very visible start, and it allows us to be more intentional and have our people aware that it's a focus area for us. But we need to manifest that in a much broader way, and we have done that to some extent. But we're going to do it more, and we're going to be a lot more intentional about it. We're going to be a lot more impatient about it.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of interesting points. I feel like, watching the national media, Detroit, the county executive, the mayor, the police chief, we have handled the situation differently in a lot of ways better than I think a lot of other places in the country. And I think that goes true for the corporate community as well. And so I think kudos to you and a lot of the people that are the CEO group that you're a board member of and that you're involved with. I think that's, I think corporate community support is always incredibly helpful. And I just want to get your thoughts real quick. You heard today, and I know you were on a private conversation with the county executive a few days ago about this $50 million grant program, where it's going to true small businesses. Tell us what you think about the program.
I mean, it's incredible. I'm really happy and proud for you and the county exec and everybody that put that. I know the commission chair Alisha was on, is with you as well. I mean, it's just incredibly important. I mean, and the way that you are really focusing it at, sort of that under the $1 million smaller companies is spot on. I mean, because there was an interesting article just in the New York Times today where it said, Black-owned businesses, small businesses, they have had a hard time getting to those federal programs. They don't have necessarily a relationship with a bank that allowed them to be first in line when some of those programs came through, right? And we've certainly seen that even to a lesser extent within our portfolio. And so we've spent a lot of time and energy trying to connect people with the information and how to access these things and how to get PPE and how to do all those kinds of things. So the scale is really impressive. The fact that it's coming through the county with the leadership of your team and everything else, and then the focus on the most needy from as far as those that really need the help the most and have had the least access to it. I applaud it.
Yeah, so I'm getting a question right now, and it's actually leading me right into my next question for you. But, oftentimes in times of crisis, people look to their corporate community for assistance. Bedrock has been on the forefront of trying to help small businesses in Detroit and other places. Obviously, you own a lot of buildings downtown. There's a lot of small businesses in your buildings. Tell us a little bit about what your company is doing to help.
Sure. Well, from a Bedrock standpoint, I mean, we're almost like dealing with multiple crises, right? I mean,
right.
To the COVID and then Mr. Floyd and so on. But from a COVID standpoint, right from the beginning, we said it was clear that our small businesses were going to be impacted on. And so we went to all of our retail businesses, think of it like our ground floor tenants, right? We have 127 of them in Detroit. And early on, we said, look, we're going to give you April, May, and June as rent-free and occupancy cost-free, no parking costs, no rent, no nothing. And because we wanted to be there for them when they needed us. We wanted to be there early, and we wanted to be there in a significant way because the small businesses are so key to us in so many different ways. I mean, they employ so many people. They bring the energy to the community. They provide opportunities for minorities and other places to plug in. And so we were like not going to take the risk that people were going to just lose hope and move away. And so we did that right away. And then we came right on top of that. And when it became apparent with the governor's very thoughtful leadership and the mayors and the county executives that we're going to open, but we're going to open gradually, we said, look, let's do the same thing from our standpoint. Let us bring the rent line back on gradually. So we converted all of our tenants to a variable rent. And so for the balance of the year. So if they're constrained at 25% occupancy and their revenue's down, correspondingly, then the rent will only be 25%. And so we've tried to do that. We've partnered with the mayor on Detroit Means Business. We're doing a lot with you guys in the city to understand how we can promote businesses. Our Quick Loans Community Fund has been out through Tech Town and other things, putting money out there. We really engaged in the testing that's taking place at the state fair. So, I mean, Dan Gilbert and the whole family of companies is passionate about Detroit. It's our hometown, and so we're trying to plug in everywhere that we can.
I think that's so important. We are getting stories all the time of landlords kicking tenants out right now. Meanwhile, one of the largest landlords, the largest probably landlord downtown, is gradually adjusting rent rolls so that they can help people in this time. I think that's admirable. And for anybody who doesn't know, the Tech Town program that Mr. Cullen just mentioned is a $5,000 grants that his company and the mayor and others got together with Tech Town to award to businesses within Detroit in a very similar manner to what we're talking about on our program. And I think programs like that absolutely help. Look, you've got a lot of projects going around downtown. The one obviously near and dear to our hearts, right? The criminal justice complex, but you're also still, got Hudson's and Monroe, and you still own a lot of buildings. There's a lot of construction that was paused, if you will, because of the pandemic. Tell us some of the issues that you see from that standpoint.
Well, I mean, I tell you, it's exciting times to get back to work, right? I mean, because there's a lot of great projects. We're tremendously excited about them. I mean, obviously, the criminal justice complex allows us to then bring the Detroit Center for Innovation with the University of Michigan and Stephen Ross. And so it's really a win-win on a lot of different fronts. It replaces a very, antiquated and poor condition facility. But the Hudson's project is an iconic project that's going to really just change the narrative about what's going on in the city of Detroit and what we're doing, the Book Tower and One Campus Marshes. I mean, we're right in the middle of this $5.6 billion commitment to development in the community of what we've done and what we're doing. it was so much fun to be able to see everybody getting back to work. I mean, and to, you know, see the cranes start to show up again and people getting back to work. And so, and I think it's important right now with the things that, you know, the challenges and the concerns that people have, to be able to be, hopefully provide some leadership and demonstrate that our commitment and our passion for the city, and certainly Dan's commitment and passion for the city is intact and increasing. And so we're really enthusiastic to be back to work in that regard.
We're getting a lot of questions that really, I think, want to tap into your expertise. You know, first, you know, folks are curious, what do you see the future of office space looking like? You know, obviously stay-at-home orders have gotten people used to being at home for some time. People are, you know, on Zoom calls and webinars like we're doing now. You're at the office, I'm at the office, not everybody's at the office. How do you see that kind of moving forward in the future?
Well, I'm at the office because we had power outage last week on the east side, and I don't have Comcast back yet. So if there's anybody in Comcast out there that wants to come out and help us, let me know. But you're right. I tell you what, it's so funny because I came back into the office and I the other day, because of this circumstance, I didn't even have a camera on my computer, and it's like, how could it be? That was only like 3 months ago, right? And now all I do is spend my time sitting here looking at the camera, like for all the Zoom meetings. I think it's remarkable how well people have adjusted to working from home in many, many ways. And but I think it's equally compelling that people need to get out of the home, and they need to get out and they need to interact with people, and they need that kind of engagement and so on. So I think you can be very productive, but I think we've learned that we can do that, but we've also learned that we don't want to do it all the time. And we learned that we want to be out and we want to be interacting with people. We want to do those kinds of things. So, you know, my kind of crystal ball relative to office real estate, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, you know, as we come back, and family companies come back, Bedrock, Quicken, and so on, we clearly are going to come back with some people still working, you know, some percentage or a significant percentage at home. But there's also going to be less density. I mean, and so, you know, we've kind of created a lot of energy, and people do by getting down to as low as 100 square foot per person or something. So kind of people tied a lot of energy. Well, that's changing, right? I mean, that's not going to be the same anymore. And so, so I think what we're going to see, Khalil, is those two kind of contrasting forces, right? One of them is the population in the office building probably won't be as high on any given day, and yet people are going to be more spread out. So what does that mean relative to the real estate? Not sure. It will be interesting to see. But what it does say to us is we're going to have to be more intentional about making sure that we support our small businesses and such downtown, because there probably won't be, just on a daily basis, quite as many people in the office buildings. And so we're going to have to get people down here and enjoying things. So it's a fascinating time to see what's going to play out from a real estate occupancy and valuation standpoint. But, you know, we're full speed ahead with Hudson's. We're full speed ahead with the Book Tower. We're full speed ahead because we still are very bullish on Detroit.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think the economy is going to look like for Southeast Michigan going forward? You know, as the Congresswoman just mentioned, our numbers are better than other places, but our unemployment rate is high because of the virus. How do you see all this playing out?
You know, it's an interesting, again, it's sort of pre-March, and now, you know, what's going to happen later on. I mean, pre-March, I mean, with the things that were going on, our autos were doing terrific. I mean, we had a real expansion in financial services. We had a lot of other professional services kind of growth. Unemployment was very low. Unemployment, you know, on a relative basis to historically was low, even within the minority population and so on. So we were making a lot of progress, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think what the program that you announced today, the things that we're trying to do, the things that the Congresswomen are working on, I mean, that's what we need to be about. And that's kind of like where we were with our small businesses. I mean, we definitely wanted to be supportive and we wanted to do the right thing. But there's a pragmatism too that says if you don't take care of them, they're not going to be there. And so it's really important. And then if they're not there, they're not paying rent, and they're, you know, and then you're trying to get them, you know, those spaces filled again. And so I think the real lesson for us, be it those small businesses, other sort of enterprises we're working on, we have to really work really aggressively to maintain them, because it's a heck of a lot easier to maintain those things than it is to try and recreate them, right? So I guess prognosis for the economy is still pretty good. I mean, it seems like Governor Whitmer's leadership, I mean, on how she handled COVID together with the county exec and the mayor, I mean, look, we're in a lot better shape than a lot of people. And so we seem to be ramping up now while others are still, approaching some challenging times. So I don't wish that on them. And we're not celebrating success here, but I feel like, we're positioned getting into the middle of next year to feel like we're coming back to where we were before.
Fantastic. Great, wonderful insight. Matthew Cullen, thank you. And thank you for your time on all this. I just got to say, got to know you over the last 4 or 5 years now and watched you do deals, worked on deals with you. For those who don't know, this is the man who helped sell the Renaissance building, has done, the civil, criminal justice complex, the, U of M, coming downtown, Hudson's, Monroe, and all. I mean, we can go on and on and on about the kind of development and real estate deals that Matthew Cullen has had. And it's been a pleasure just to learn from you and watch you, over the last few years. But I wanted to thank you for your time because I think a lot of small businesses listening right now are getting a lot of good advice. So thank you for your time.
I appreciate the kind words and the opportunity to be on with you, Chloe.
Yeah, anytime.
Take care.
Well, I want to thank everybody who has joined us and sat through this entire ordeal. I want to just remind everybody that if you haven't gotten a chance to, please check out our website at www.waynecounty.com for the actual grant program and details. It's that same website, /back to work. And the 2 is not the number 2, it's the TO, and that'll get you to the grant application information. We are going to have webinars coming up over the next few weeks, which you will find on our website at www.waynecounty.com. Please join those webinars because we want as many applications as we can get so we can get as much money in the hands of the people who need it. My name has been Khalil Rahal, and I want to thank everybody for joining us.